I always wanted to go green. I like the idea of going green, and the cost savings, obviously. I wanted to do an analysis to see, I'm gonna be in my house long term. I just bought the house. So one of the things I thought about when I bought the house was I'm gonna be here long term, so I thought that solar power would make sense for me. I was looking around for a contractor, and I had looked at a couple of different contractors, and I happened to be talking to one of their current clients, and because I know that he had done the solar power, and I asked him, who his contractor was, and he referred me to Energy by Choice. I interviewed 2 or 3 contractors, and from the very beginning of the process, Sale came to my house, and I was very impressed with his knowledge, his professionalism, and the way he went about doing the initial analysis of my needs was far and away much better than in comparison with the other contractors that had come to see me. The initial evaluation, he really did a good job of really specifically got up on my roof the very first time he came, specifically looking at where my shadows would be and where I had obstructions, and then he did a real scientific analysis of how much power I could produce based on different types of systems and where I could put the panels and how many inverters he'd have to do, whereas other contractors really just took a snapshot of my roof off of Google Maps and said, we can just, here's the square footage we can use, and we could just throw in the panels. It was a much more, that to me was really the very first differentiating factor. It was a much more scientific way that I felt he was going about the analysis. He went through a couple of different revisions because he did analysis one way, analysis the other way. We ended up with 3 inverters as opposed to some systems only have 1, because he wanted to make sure that when certain shadows were shining on certain, or certain shadows were hitting certain panels, that wouldn't take out one whole set of panels. So we ended up using 3 inverters to maximize the efficiency of the system, with my limited space on my roof. The positive thing about the crew and the way they worked was that no matter how long it took them, every day when they left, it was as if they hadn't been there. They cleaned up the spot, the site. There was nothing left obstructing they were careful to keep things out of the way in my garage and the side of my house, so that I didn't have to worry when I came home about having anything obstructing from the construction that was going on. Sale's a guy who, to me, he always struck me as a guy who's not just in it for the money. Obviously, he's making a living doing this, but he's got a real interest in solar power and in the green technology and, the carbon footprint and that kind of thing. And, as somebody who also has that type of interest, I had a lot of interesting conversations with him throughout the process, and he gave me a lot of insight into other things, and then I started talking to him about all other alternative energies as well. He's very knowledgeable about a lot of different alternative energies. So he struck me as really personable. From the first time I met him here in the office, and before he even came to look at the house, we sat down and just kind of interviewed him. Actually, I shouldn't say. I think he came to the house first, and then he came to meet me in the office. But either way, when he presented me with his ideas, he really knew his stuff, and he was very professional in that. So I just liked him. And then personally, he gave me anecdotes of different systems that he'd done and whatever, and his own system. So, he was very forthright in all the communication I had with him. Yeah, they always cleaned up, always went out of their way to be polite. My wife was home most of the time while they were doing the work. So she was, she would say to me, I felt comfortable that, there would be times when she'd have to leave the house and she wasn't worried, about having a crew at the house while she wasn't home, that kind of thing. Nice kids, younger guys, but always, more than accommodating in everything they did. Vendela did a lot of follow-up for contract information and invoices and that kind of stuff. No problems there, A couple times she had to have a little patience with me. She needed some paperwork that I didn't have done. I guess she had to follow up with me once or twice to get the stuff in, but always very professional. Also, never any issues there. They gave me a system. Also, that was another differentiating factor, is the way that system works in terms of being able to monitor what it's doing. there's 3 different ways I can monitor it. I can monitor it right there on the inverters, I can monitor it on a little monitor on the wall, or I can monitor it online at any time I want. Sale had explained that to me, that with this system, that was one of the advantages, is that I could see my production day by day. I haven't really gotten into the heavy production season yet. We just had it done. I think it's November was the first full month I had the system in, so we're only a few months into it now. And of course, we've had a very rough winter, so it's not, there was a few days that it actually couldn't produce because of snow or whatever. But by and large, I think it's doing a good job. I think that they did a great job. I've had a lot of contractors since I recently bought the house, and I'd say this crew was one of the most professional and delivered very well on their promises, right down to, at the end of the job, there's always a little punch list of a few things that you want to have changed or, corrected or whatever, and they were, very responsive in getting that stuff done for me as well. I'd say talk to them, that was one thing that Sale was very cognizant of, is doing the cost analysis. He gave me very accurate analysis over the course of time as to what the cost would be versus the payback period versus how much I would have to lay out in terms of my cash flow and how things would play out. One of the biggest factors when you're going for solar, there's 2 factors in my mind anyway that I looked at, is A, the environmental impact, and B, the economical impact that it has on you. So obviously the environmental impact is going to be positive, but from a financial standpoint, because I'm going to be in my house long term, it made sense. If somebody was moving in 5 years, financially it might not make sense for you. But if you're going to be in your house for 10 to 15 years, then most likely you're going to get a system that will make sense for you financially over the course of time. I'm a real advocate for all types of alternative energy. I just think that, a few years ago we had a strain on the electric grid, and we had all this talk about, when blackouts come and things that happen. And my perspective is, if everybody on my block got solar that could get solar, that it made sense for, and we did that on a large scale basis as they're doing in other countries, it would be great for our economy, it would be great for our system, our infrastructure. So is it a necessity? No, it hasn't become a necessity yet, but it may become a necessity. So I like to think that I'm ahead of the curve.